welcome back to the Digital Creators Podcast. Tonight we're in the studio with Gene. Welcome, Gene.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So, introducing Gene Brutty, formerly a creative director at both Apple and Google, Gene now serves as the co-founder and executive creative director of Imagine IF Labs, specializing in branding, storytelling, advertising, and marketing. Gene brings extensive experience from his time at Google, where he held a regional creative director role in the Asia Pacific region. He's worked with renowned brands such as Toyota, Nike, and Coca-Cola. At Apple, based in Los Angeles, Gene contributed to the successful launch of digital and social campaigns for the iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro in 2020. Now at Imagine Labs, Gene applies strategic creative thinking to solve real business problems. In this episode, we're going to talk about Gene's personal journey, his discovery of design thinking, his impactful roles at Apple and Google, and his return to Perth. This is recorded at FreoCast. Shout out to FreoCast. Become a FreoCast member today and join the community. You can kind of tell I got that from your LinkedIn. but anyway, that's very impressive.
Well, LinkedIn's all lies anyway. So
All lies, yeah. Everyone just tweaks their resume up.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could take us back to where your creative journey started. Did it start in Perth? Were you born in Perth?
Yeah, born and raised in Perth. Everything sort of started here. I guess my creative journey started when I realized how badly at school I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
High school was, there weren't that many creative avenues for a student to pursue, from a career point of view. So I think that's probably where I had to have a good hard look at myself and kind of figure out.
What school was that?
I went to Shenton College.
College.
It was Hollywood High School for 2 years, and then that shut down, and we merged with Swanbourne, and that became Shenton College, which is a really, really great public. I think it's ranked one against the private schools. It performs really well. A lot of really smart kids go there. Except for me.
I mean, you did end up at Google and Apple, so I guess that's something. But
I think I always enjoyed art and design, and I think once I realized I couldn't impress my mum and dad by becoming like a lawyer or an accountant or something, I thought, well, maybe there's a something in the creative field that might spark my interest and might allow me to apply my attention.
Because I remember because when I was in high school, that was the first year. This was at John Curtin. That's the first year they had an arts program. So they only just started bringing in arts programs 10 years ago or so.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I won't give away my age, but we're going way back, So look, I'm sure that's all changed now, and I'd like to think that the systems really offer a really diverse range of avenues for kids to go down and explore. I mean, to me, I still think 15 or 16 is just a ridiculous age to even attempt to decide on what you want to do for the rest of your life. So, I think I definitely don't think it's like it was, but I sort of took the hard road, and there was a lot of figuring out what I wanted to do through failing, not being able to do other things. Yeah.
So how did that process kind of happen for you? Did you finish school? Did you have a gap year, or what sort of work were you doing, or did you just travel somewhere? Or
so at the time it was called TE or TEE. Well, I think it's now ATAR. I think it's the same thing, but so I took those classes without any idea of what I wanted to do. Right, I just thought I've got to do the exams because that's going to set me up for what I want to do later once I figure it out. And that was just I don't think I knew any better, and it was just the common sort of I guess was perceived that if you did those exams and you did your ATAR, it was like that was
Yeah.
what you should do.
That's the typical route that they suggest.
Yeah, and so like it didn't benefit me at all. I didn't get anything from it. It would have actually been better for me not to do it, which I know in hindsight. But so I did those. I got a pretty bad score. I couldn't get into any universities or any courses because there was like a base mark that you sort of needed to get. So what I did was I picked up the TAFE handbook, which school counsellors gave me. And I essentially flicked through and I looked at, all the different courses. And at the time, TAFE was really the place that offered, creative courses and, certs and certificate 4s and 3s and, diplomas in things like photography and film and and design and graphic design. And so I looked and I found graphic design. I thought, okay, that sounds kind of cool. I like drawing. I like, and not the traditional type of drawing. I guess, it was just like sometimes it was paintings, other times it was just, weird abstract shapes. And so I applied for that. And I think I didn't get in straight away. I actually had to draw up a folio for them.
Yeah.
And I got in the second round. And that's where I think things started to click. I was through that. I did 3 years at TAFE there. So I did the certificate I did 3 years, got the advanced diploma in graphic design. And then there was an advertising unit in my final year, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, I want to hear the whole.
Yeah. So from there,
journey.
I took a gap year. I went over to Germany. I lived in Germany for a year. Then I came back. And before I'd left, I'd heard that there was a course at Curtin University, which was quite good and renowned for producing some very good creatives that then went on to the advertising industry in Perth. And it was a 4-year bachelor degree, which I couldn't have gotten into out of high school, but because I'd done the practical course at TAFE and I had 3 years and I had their advanced diploma, the university would credit those years. So I actually ended up getting into university.
Oh yeah.
I went the long way around.
Okay.
And I got in because I'd done TAFE, so I wouldn't have gotten in straight out of high school.
Yeah.
Which I think was a blessing in disguise because the sort of skills I learned at TAFE were very much like your hands were on the tools. You were learning practical skills, designing, in Adobe Creative Suite and things like that. And the Curtin course was brilliant and had some great lecturers there and still in touch with some of them. So, but there was, I guess I would say there were practical elements to it, but it was a little bit more theoretical, which then, so I was doing more theoretical stuff with a lot of really core practical skills and knowledge that other students there didn't have. So it was definitely an advantage for me to actually go through TAFE and then do that. So I did the gap year, then a year and a half at Curtin, and that got me that bachelor's degree. So
okay,
yeah, I had the 2 degrees, advanced diploma from TAFE and then the bachelor from Curtin.
Did you go straight to trying to get a job out of uni, or did you want to travel again? Or?
So I think I hadn't even finished yet, and I was doing like a non-paid internship, which was very common. I don't know if it still is, but very common. Very common in the industry. So at an advertising agency here, and that sort of didn't get the job straight away, but fairly soon after graduating, I got a job at a small digital agency here. So that was part of a larger advertising agency, and that's how I got in. And then, and then I'd say the rest is history. But that was a long process as well to work in the advertising and creative industry in Perth. And then, it was during that time that I got paired up with my creative partner, who to this day is my creative partner.
Yeah.
So he's the founder of Imagine If Labs.
Yeah.
And we've worked together since, I guess when did we get paired together now? 2009 or 8, maybe even sometime around then.
Yeah.
Was when we got paired together in our first job. And
did you have to network to kind of get into that creative advertising job, or did you just like apply sort of thing?
So that's what was really good, honestly, about the Curtin University course, was the lecturers there really provided us with ways into the industry while we were doing the course, which really helped because it didn't then necessarily require us to go and knock on every door, so a few different people got internships at different agencies, and obviously it was up to you to really then hustle during that internship and show, I guess, you had that tenacity and and you'd want a job after the internship had finished. And so there was still a lot of, I guess, hustle and putting yourself forward you needed to do, but the course there really provided, well, personally me, with a really good leg up into the industry. And I think everything that came after that was, the key was don't take it for granted. Work your absolute butt off. Don't look up and just keep going full steam ahead. And I think, that for me at least, that Tim, my work partner, he had that same mentality. And, I think that's why we got along really well, even though we're very different people. But the drive that we had was very similar. And I think we both very early on was super thankful that we had, our early jobs in the Perth creative industry. But I think we definitely set our sights on the world, on going overseas. And everything we did here was, I think, a calculated stepping stone to getting out of Perth.
Yeah.
And the challenges we faced here was like, for us, it was just like we saw it like it was like a trial by fire, right? So if we can't get out of Perth, then we're not going to make it. That was the mindset we had. I don't think that's true. But it was a way for us to, keep pushing beyond the day-to-day jobs that we had, because the way we got out and recognized was actually through, I'd say, extracurricular award show. There were like challenges, like not challenges, like competitions that companies and award shows would put on, which gave young creatives in advertising an opportunity to work on briefs they wouldn't normally get to work on, but then also sort of like flex your creative skills and then be compared against the rest of the world. And doing things like that allowed us to get recognized by agencies over in Sydney, where we ended up going to. Yeah.
So they kind of contacted you based on the work that they saw, or you were hitting them up, sort of thing? Or?
Oh, the agencies in Sydney?
Yeah.
It was work that we'd done through some of these competitions. It was like
the competitions. Okay.
Yeah. There was this like,
because they were like based over east.
The competitions were based internationally. So there was the Cannes Advertising Festival, like Young Lions, it's called. It's like it's a fairly big advertising festival. The thing is, advertising festivals, like, no one knows about them or of them outside of advertising.
Yeah.
Like people in advertising like to think that it's the be all and end all, and like that, their festivals are, the equivalent of the Oscars, but literally no one in advertising knows of them or has heard of them.
Yeah.
So it's like this sort of like echo chamber of just look how talented we are, and it's like, well,
did you put it on your LinkedIn back then? Surely.
The
early
Young
LinkedIn.
Lions. I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't scrolled down to the awards section. So that's how we got our job over east. But getting over east, I think we quickly found out that it's not too different from Perth, really. It's like the
Really?
grass is always greener, you know. It's like, sure, there's a difference in the size of agencies that you work for and the size of clients and things like that. But at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't reflect on you or your skills where you are, whether you're working in Perth as a creative or if you're working in Sydney or Melbourne as a creative. And I think again, same goes like if you're overseas. You know, I think you're going to be as good as you want to be wherever you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think opportunity-wise, would you say there's more opportunity in Sydney or overseas
Yeah.
in the US? Yeah.
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 Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. And what I guess you're working in Sydney for a few years. Were you with Tim, like working
Yeah.
together as well?
Yeah. Yeah. He was. So we actually lived together as well as worked together, which was interesting. It was like
Get on each other's
24/7. Yeah, it was. I'm not sure I'd recommend it. We got through it. It was just like, yeah, it was.
Made it through anyway.
Yeah. We went through a few different agencies there. I think just two or three while we were there. And we were there for about 4.5 years. I think it was 4 years. And then from there we managed to get a job at Google in Tokyo.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Which was that wasn't on our you know, I was saying earlier like that we had these premeditated steps of like, you know, one thing led to another, but that was not, I can safely say that was not on our radar. It was a happy coincidence. It was serendipitous. It was, you know, a good example of how life works sometimes, where you just, you know, in the right place at the right time, and you know the right people, and you just jump on that opportunity, and you give it your all, and manage to pull it off somehow.
And you applied for, like, you guys applied for Google, or you applied for Google?
So we didn't apply. We had two very, very good friends of ours who we worked with at the first agency we were at in Sydney. Ian and Tara, they were at Google in Sydney, and you know, we went to, I think, one other agency, and then Tim and I sort of like, we just had enough. We just got too burnt out in the advertising scene and industry, and we just sort of decided to go freelance. We sort of hit that point where we're just like, nah, this isn't it. We're not satisfied anymore. We're not feeling like, you know, we're doing something that we really love. So it's not worth doing. Let's quit, go freelance. We didn't have a plan. But, you know, we wanted to essentially have a little bit more control over our work and our lives.
Yep.
And it was at that point in time that, you know, our friends sort of, we were just caught up with them casually for some drinks and in the Rocks in Sydney, and like very, very casually they sort of were talking about that they were looking to hire some creative directors in Tokyo, and it was really difficult for Google to find creative directors that like, I guess, with international experience that were willing to sort of
Drop everything and move? Or?
well, drop everything and move, but operate and learn to work in a culture that was so foreign than from their own. Google obviously being a American company, you know, now it's not hard. I think everyone would give their left leg to go and work in Tokyo, but at the time it was difficult for them to find either English speaking Japanese creatives or people that were willing to, you know, sort of uproot their lives and go over there for an extended period of time. Again, which seems crazy to me, and I'm sure to you, like, who wouldn't jump at that opportunity? But you know, we were in a position where we could, right? We didn't have the full-time job. We didn't have to worry about handing in any notice. And so we said, well, hey, put us forward and put us in touch with your boss. And, you know, that was just the beginning, right? Because to get into Google, it was like months and months of interviews and you know, like psychological tests and police background checks, and it was like it resembled like you know, I may as well have been joining the police force or the CIA or something. That's what it felt like. But then
kind of makes sense in a way. Like you have access. I mean, like depending on the position, you might have access to people's information.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess we never did though, thankfully. But no, it was we managed to get that job, and I'd never been to Japan in my life, not even on a holiday. So Tim had been once before and he loved it, so he was like, yeah, we need to do this. And I was sorry.
You guys, how long were you guys freelancing before you kind of got offered the job? Were you just like, oh, we want to freelance now? Oh, wait a second, we got a job at Google. Let's do Google.
We freelanced for 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months.
Yeah, just under half a year, I think. But because the interview process took so long at Google, I think that probably the last 2 months of us freelancing was also going through that process. So
must have been pretty hard to get in. I'd imagine they'd have like a lot of voice look through. And again, you guys are going together at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even now, I think it's still common to creatives work in teams. They still do, less so at like a really senior executive level, but it's a lot of creative duos. So traditionally, it was always.
You could apply as I haven't actually heard of that where you can apply as a duo or.
I mean, I'd say the search for creative duos and the application of creative duos is more it's sort of unique to advertising, because it was traditionally always an art director and copywriter that got paired together. You know, the art director does the visuals and design, copywriter does the scripts and everything like that. So, I mean, and that's changed. I don't think it's really that relevant now at all. However, because you have developers and, all sorts of different creative disciplines now, are needed to come up with sort of ideas that you'd want for a marketing campaign. So, but the creatives working better together, that still rings true.
Yeah.
You know, it's just about like, what's that makeup going to be, which is what's changing now. Yeah. And I mean, I think fewer and fewer creative duos stay together because of life. You know, someone gets married, another person wants to have a family and children, priorities change. But there's a few that still really stay together a long time, and yeah,
that's awesome. And yeah, I guess you they were just looking for someone that was open to learn maybe how. Why did they want someone from Australia working at Google? Did the Japanese Google want to know how like maybe the Australian market thought, or what was the reason behind that?
So I guess they weren't specifically looking for Australian creatives. I think Australia has I personally think a really good sort of rap when it comes to creatives. Like a lot of really, really talented Australian creatives go on overseas to big agencies and big companies, and they do really good things because, I guess at least in advertising creative, Australians have a really good work ethic, I think. Very like tenacious, the teams that come out of Australia. And this, again, is going back quite a few years now, but in the same way that I think now, like some of the most talented creatives come from New Zealand. Like the New Zealand creative advertising industry is just insane. Insanely good creatives, and they produce amazing work. And I guess maybe the sort of commonalities there are small island nations produce this sort of separation from the rest of the world. Maybe actually incubates really lateral thinking and sort of obscure creative people, just for whatever reason. But I think that's why it was less about their interest in Australia as a market and more about we want a certain type of people, like a certain type of person, creative person, to come and think about ideas surrounding Google technology, and where do you go to look for those?
Okay, so it's more about how you were thinking, like it was more
Yes.
about your creative mind, how you saw things.
Yes.
Okay.
So Tim and I were, very digitally focused, creative, and a lot of what we did was based around coming up with product ideas, and like creating sort of services or utilities that were, I guess at the time app based and things like that, and really trying to be as innovative as possible with the brand's marketing objectives, which to people at Google was really attractive, right? Because obviously Google has all of these emerging technologies and they're trying to create products and tools and services for people and in the Google suite. So I think for them, they were like, oh, well, these guys will be good because they lean towards that side of, creative thinking anyway. And I assume that was the appeal. We didn't question it. We were just happy to
and you
get the
guys
job.
didn't speak any Japanese?
No. We tried to learn. Tim actually lives in Japan still now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's got a wife and a baby
Oh,
girl
okay,
over
cool.
there. So he speaks because he has to speak. But at the time we didn't speak Japanese. Still don't. But operating and working for Google, it was predominantly English speaking, and I think.
And you the staff were speaking English?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, there were a lot of expats that worked there. Obviously, a lot of Americans that worked there. There were a lot of obviously Japanese employees that spoke Japanese. They had a really big domestic business, and we worked with Japanese clients a lot as well and companies. So often we would have translators come with us to meetings or presentations, and I think we lived and worked there for 5 years in that role. So during that time, I took lessons. I learned a little bit, enough to get around, but nowhere near conversational level. But I don't think that knowing the language was not a requirement to understanding the culture. So you could still understand the professional work culture or the social cultures without that.
Speaking language,
as long as you were willing to immerse yourself in the way they do things over there, and the sorts of processes and nuances and quirks that come with any different culture, as long as you're willing to really live it and immerse yourself in that, it doesn't, I don't personally think, or at least not in Japan, you don't need to know conversational Japanese to have an effect or an impact on the sorts of work or projects you do there. Obviously, speaking fluently and with businessmen or like any person there will unlock that will unlock different and more doors than not speaking, but I don't think it's a barrier to entry.
It's I'm not sure if it's because Google's like a Western based company, but it's interesting that Google Japan would reach out to someone internationally who doesn't speak the language, or like looking for somebody internationally to just on the pure premise that they want that person's creative thinking. Like that's it. Kind of to me, it reflects Japan's value on creativity, because I went there last year, just for a holiday, but also I had the opportunity to shoot Japan Fashion Week just as a photographer, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And they were just so open to having someone come and collaborate. And then the people I met there were like open to collaborate, and they were like, oh yeah, let's go to this. And again, like I didn't necessarily speak I didn't speak Japanese, but yeah, there was this openness to creativity and collaboration there. Like I'm not sure Matsu Photography.
No.
Daniel Craig. He was on the podcast, and he was over there as well. And I met this young stylist Japanese guy, just exchanged Instagrams. And then when I was in Osaka, he was there, so I collaborated on this photo shoot, which was super fun. And then it turns out Matsu, who lives in Perth, he starts collaborating. He's like collabing with them. He lives now there in Japan with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But he does shoots with them and like fashion brands like Fred Perry and all this. So it's they just have a really open creative culture there from what I experienced. And even going to the fashion shows, I was expecting it to be this because Tokyo is known for its fashion scene. So I was expecting like this huge barrier to entry to go in there. But they literally like hand out stuff on the street, like, yeah, just come up and you can sit there. And I was like even surprised I could just take photos, and it was really cool to see because I think just in the fashion scene it can feel like it has that barrier to entry. But in Japan, that creative culture, it was just evident that creative culture, they were just so open to creativity. And
I'm really glad that was your takeaway and you saw that, because my biggest takeaway from my time there, I was amazed at how willing to collaborate absolutely anyone was with you, which I'm not used to. Like, there's brilliant creatives. Australia has a great creative scene, but if you're known, or it definitely feels a lot more guarded here. It's like if I have something, it's like, oh, I don't want to share with anyone and everyone. Like, someone might steal it, or like, it's you really try and protect what you have. Whereas Japan, I was amazed at how welcoming everyone was, and no matter who they were, they could be hugely famous artists, and the was just so humble. I was like, the Australian equivalent, if they were like as accomplished as you, would not be talking to someone they don't know and inviting them to into this project or to do anything.
Even especially if they don't speak the language. The young stylist Janky who was hanging out with, and he had a friend Coco who's like an incredible like nail artist. She makes these 3D printed nails, which is super cool.
I actually saw that.
Oh, you saw that? Yeah. We just did a photo shoot, and then we actually did like 2 little podcasts with them, just talking about what they do. And Jenki could speak a bit of English, and then one of the models could speak English, so she just translated. So it was just like, and it wasn't planned. It was just like super easy to do. Whereas, I think if you tried something like that here, it's just more difficult. In terms of the creative culture.
Yeah, especially I think when there is like that creative project or process is set in a corporate or professional, if it's like there's business built around that, it feels almost untouchable. It's like, because there's money being made and charged for, and we can't open that up or allow anyone to touch or affect that. Whereas in Japan, I think they see collaboration as a way to improve either the project or as a networking tool for business, and I think the number of projects I saw in Japan, or I was a part of, where it was shared between like 4 or 5 different companies, was incredible, because to me that seemed, I was like, wow, like everyone's comfortable enough and trusting enough to allow so many different people and companies to touch it or influence the project and the work and the outcome, without getting into a bit of a scrap on like, this part was my idea, and we need this much money, and so on and so forth. You really didn't see that. I think the Japanese, when they're creating something, definitely their focus is 100% on whatever it is they're making, and how do I make that as good as it can be. And that often means bringing in lots of different people and expertise. that's what makes that so
Yeah.
good, you know.
And I think they wanted that maybe international perspective, because I think that, like, when I travel to another place, like, I'm seeing the world in another perspective, in that you're going to a different culture. Maybe they have a different, they have a different way of seeing things. They have a different urban design for that city. They have different culture, different food. So it's like, it really, if you're open-minded enough, you can like take, learn and sort of take these ideas and influence them in your work. I feel like maybe that's why they're so open to having international people come in. It's like a different perspective coming in, something like that.
I mean, I think that's definitely, that was the selling point of my team at Google, was we would work with large brands that are spending a lot of money on media with Google, and Google would offer then our services as a essentially like a value add, right? So it's like a UK is spending X $1 million a year.
Is this like Google Ads?
Yeah, it could be anything like search, YouTube, anything and everything. There's I think for a big company, it was mainly ads, yeah. And I guess Google wanted to upsell their other emerging technologies, right? Like beyond paid search advertising and YouTube pre-rolls and bumpers and stuff like that. They had their AR product, which was AR Core. They had the Google Assistant and the whole voice platform. They had machine learning sort of systems and computer vision. So there's a lot of technology they're developing that wasn't being bought and used as much as the standard ad stuff. So they wanted to show companies, hey, there's like a lot of other stuff you can be using as well. But also I think, they wanted to develop more human relatable use cases for the sort of the more cutting edge technology, because coming up with the technology and developing it is one thing, but
having someone use it
or letting, for that technology to become adopted, you need it to be really meaningful and relevant to the average person. And that was difficult because they had the smartest engineers in the world developing this stuff, but you still needed to make it mean something. You still needed to be like, okay, well, as amazing as it is, how this was created and what it can potentially theoretically do, it was okay, sure. But what does that look like in a product? How is someone, Joe Blow down the road, what does that mean to him and how is he going to use it? And that's what we were lucky enough to work on, was to go to a Toyota or a Shiseido or a Panasonic and try and think of ways that they could integrate some of that newer technology into the things that they were doing, the products that they were building, or their marketing, advertising sort of initiatives for the year. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I guess for them, there were enough Japanese agencies that could do the sort of basic advertising stuff.
Yeah,
but I guess the international or outsider's perspective of how we might apply this technology, is what they were looking for, and Google, as being an American company, was why they, I guess also why Google looked for creatives outside of Japan.
And was Google Japan, that was mostly focused on the Japanese market, but then they had some international employees come in like yourself to kind of facilitate brands that would come to that Google in Japan? Is that how it worked?
So our first few jobs, our first remit was in the Japanese market for Japanese companies and brands, but it very quickly grew to be regional, because Asia Pacific it's so big and it's so diverse. It's not you can't blanket it as just it's the Asia region.
Yeah.
It's like, well, every country there, it's its own world. The like cultures there don't share any similarities. Like everywhere it's so unique and it's so different. You can't create something in Japan and then tweak it a little bit and roll it out in different markets. It's like Asia doesn't work like that. You can in the States.
Yeah.
You could argue you could do that for a lot of Europe as well. But companies and brands and marketers that are trying to expand across the region here, Australia, New Zealand, specifically Asia, like you really need to take a different approach there. And I think our remit grew because what we were doing in Japan, Google's like, well, we have some other really big spending clients in India, or Taiwan. Can we do something there? Because Toyota is obviously in those markets,
Okay.
and the big
Gotcha.
companies are. So then we essentially took, we developed a sort of a methodology of how to start to develop these innovation projects, which was right when Google was coining this whole like design thinking approach and term, which I think IDEO is another company, a product design sort of consultancy and company, quite well known, but I'm not sure who started it, but it was, I guess an approach methodology to, I think initially it was architects and product designers, visual designers. It was their approach to developing something. And big companies sort of started to package it up and really sell it as like a tool or a process that they wanted to sell to anyone and everyone. But really it's like it's a way to create meaningful new ideas and concepts, essentially what it is. It's not a be all and end all solution to any problem you have. It's a philosophy. It's like it's human centered. It's a human centered creative process, is what it is. And the reason why architects and I think product designers really started using it, or not using it. I think it reflected what the process that they undertook anyway to do any job. But it's just like, if you have a user, you need to understand that user and the problems they face, and then you need to design something that solves those problems, and then it needs to be really usable, right? Like the interface, and it needs to, so and the whole design thinking system, it's like it's so applicable to anything really, because essentially it's like, if you have a problem, here are some true and tried and tested steps for you to be able to come up with ideas and solutions to overcome those problems. And you can apply that to architecture, you can apply it to visual design, you can apply it to finance and accounting, you could to agriculture, to, every business has a user and or a process and a way of doing things that could probably be better.
Interesting. Because I think you can apply that design thinking to anything, but I think businesses outside of maybe that design bubble, and every business needs design, but if maybe people in agriculture or people in accounting, they would never think that this methodology of thinking would be beneficial. But I think that's how I automatically think, and maybe yourself, and maybe back, going to school and the tests and exams and all that, it just doesn't reflect, maybe it just doesn't reflect this method of thinking that which maybe makes it stand out as something that's creative, because it's not typical to the average person. Like, I think I've always thought I've had that methodology. And then when I went to uni I did graphic design, and then it was kind of maybe that structure was made more clear. But yeah, I think every business can use.
I think most people have that way of thinking, because really all it's doing is it's reflecting a way to solve problems.
Or you think businesses are doing that anyway, but they're not thinking of it as design thinking, or?
So I think the name is misleading, because when you hear design thinking, if you're not in a creative industry, if let's say you're an accountant, it's just like, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are probably applying some form of design thinking without knowing it, because it's about understanding a user, identifying a problem, coming up with ideas and solutions to that, whether it's a product or a service or it's pretty basic, really.
Maybe it's just maybe just when a designer does it, it's design thinking. But when I'm even thinking like that's the same methodology for so many things, like even psychology or.
That's what I saw. When I saw, when you see it, you're just like, oh, I don't get it. But I think it was probably coined and termed because, what was it, like 6 years ago, there was this big kind of, every company needed to innovate. It's like digital innovation. You've got to change. You've got to innovate. Otherwise, you're no longer relevant.
Yeah.
And I think some executives probably looked at this design thinking methodology and they go, you know what, we can package this up and sell it to every single C-suite executive team as this is innovating, right?
Yeah.
And if we just train them up and take them through a 4-day workshop, they're going to love it, because they're like, sweet, we've innovated and we're just going to tell everyone that works here about it, and problem solved. I think that's probably why it was coined and termed and packaged and overused to the point that it is today. When in reality, innovation looks sort of like so different for everyone, right? Like what might be innovative for one person or one company is completely different and not innovative for another. And I think,
I think it just, for me, maybe it's just the confidence to do something different in a way. It's just, that's what I always pick up on. Like, when I see a company do something different, I was talking earlier about just interested in electric cars. Like I'm interested in like what sort of, how Elon Musk thinks about things. Like he seems to always be doing something different, something unique, like with the things he's bringing out with like Neuralink and, the tunnel I don't know if he's still building that tunnel under, was it under LA?
I think so.
The boring company
tunnel. Yeah.
It's just like something.
Is it Hyperloop or something like that?
Yeah. I have no idea if that's still going, but it's that confidence, I guess, or to do something completely different to how every other person is doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's saying you're going to innovate and sort of disrupt the processes of the things you're doing or create something new. Everyone wants to. It's nice to say you're doing it, but in reality, it requires taking a lot of risks and putting yourself out there, which corporations generally don't like. They want to be as risk averse as possible. They don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And I think the design thinking methodology is a way, it's kind of like risk mitigation. It's about putting a really sort of structured process in place that allows you to be creative and be experimental in a space, defined space. And then it essentially, once you come up with these ideas, it's about prototyping, it's about testing, and then it's about implementation.
Yeah.
And the prototyping and testing, that is like a really important part. And it means let's start prototyping some of these ideas and seeing which ones are the bad ones, or the ideas we think are good, but that completely fall over once someone gets it in their hand because you know what, it was theoretically a good idea. In practice, absolutely not. And it's that it's that experimental process that you need to go through regardless of what you're building or regardless of what you're changing to innovate. You know, that's what's hard, because to get that across to companies is really difficult. Like, our biggest challenge was essentially letting companies, you know, getting companies to let us do this process for them.
That's how I was thinking. Like, you guys were there to be the experts at the design thinking, always like the safety on the innovation, because innovation can fail and it can cost a company billions of dollars.
Yeah. Thankfully, we didn't cost anyone billions of dollars. If we did, I don't think I'd be sitting here. I'd probably be, you know, locked up in a container somewhere.
Because there's been quite a bit of innovation lately with AI. What's your take on Humane's AI pin, for example? I don't know if you've seen that.
I have. Look, I
think he was an ex-Google employee as well, I believe.
I think they were ex-Apple.
Oh, ex-Apple.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think it's a, you know, I don't want to jump to conclusions, because I really understand how difficult it is to, you know, conceptualize and come up with something. And, you know, the first few iterations, it might not look like anything that you'd imagined, or, you know, it's like, oh, this is like stage 1 of stage 50, and like, just give it a chance. But I don't know. I think from what I've seen, look, it probably suffers from a number of things. The first being, like, you know, this sort of knee-jerk reaction a lot of people have when really new cutting-edge technology comes out. It's like people feel this need to jump on it and do something with it. And because it's new and cutting edge, it inherently means this thing is useful. You know, it's like applying tech for tech's sake. It's like, just because it's there doesn't mean it's useful yet. Doesn't mean you need to use it and put it in everything. So, like, you know, the theoretical idea behind Humane Pin and the concept itself, it's interesting, right? I think in practice, it's very, very far from anything that resembles a useful piece of technology. It's so experimental at the minute. I feel the way they're selling it and the way it's packaged, you know, there's a disconnect there. If they just be a little bit more honest, I think it would really help, because right now it comes in my mind, like, it feels like it's just, you want to hate on it. Because if you do a little bit of prodding and poking and scrape behind the surface, it just falls over really quickly. And it's because they've just tried to do too much with it too quickly. You know, a lot of the use cases, it's like, it's cool, but like, I don't know, it's not better than just me looking at my phone. You know, there's going to be like a cost benefit, a return on investment for me to have this thing. And I think right now, at least, it's an interesting concept. I don't think they've cracked exactly what it should be yet, because the way they're describing it and what it does, it's like, it's pretty gimmicky, I think. Doesn't mean further down the line we won't be wearing one of these things in 15 years from now. You know, quite possibly we will be. Will it be that pin and that version of that pin? Absolutely not. I'll put my money on the fact that it won't be. But, you know, that doesn't mean they're not onto something. A really good example is a project we did in Tokyo in 2017 was called Braille Nails, and it was so it was together with Shiseido. Shiseido had they have like a gallery space, I think it's in Tokyo, where they you know, they sort of fund and sponsor it, and there's a lot of art in there, but there's also a lot of art there's a whole section for visually impaired people.
Yeah. Okay.
So art that visually impaired people can experience.
Mm.
And they sort of, they had use of our services, and it's like, oh, we'd love to do something innovative, but we're not sure what, being a beauty and makeup brand, it's like, what can we do that's really innovative and that's sort of, future focused and experimental, and we want to be seen as always experimenting. And so we worked with them and we came up with this idea about Braille nails, because we looked at their product, kind of, all the products they have, and we're like, what products that you have are relevant to a visually impaired person. We did a lot of like research and focus groups with visually impaired women in Japan, and asked them, do you have a makeup routine? Like, what does that look like? What's your relationship to makeup creators and, a brand like Shiseido and all this sort of thing. And it was really surprising and so educational, obviously, for us. But I think in context of Shiseido as a brand, it's like, okay, from these focus groups, we were like, well, there's actually a lot of innovation you can do. And, visually impaired people still, like, they still use makeup. Like, they want to look good. They want to feel good. They want other people to think they look good. Not that makeup determines whether you look good or not, but, that normality of using those products was really important for them. So we felt compelled to just create something experimental that gave them another product that was just theirs. So Braille nails was is a artificial acrylic nails that you could paint and design any way, but it would have sort of, there were tactile nail designs, so you could feel them in the same way that Braille is what read by feeling. So we started to design contours, so you could feel what this nail design actually looked like. So there were colors and patterns that had reliefs, and you could feel that. And we created a camera badge to go along with those nail designs. So for every nail design, we had a camera badge which had a cover that matched that design. And that camera badge was running a computer vision system, machine learning system, that essentially recognized the nail designs as a marker.
Yeah.
And when it recognized a nail, when it identified that, it would, that would automatically trigger a photo that would be taken, and then that photo was actually analyzed, and then there was a image to text system that then spoke out the description of that photo.
Cool.
So the whole premise there was like,
so was it like to take a photo of the nails with a background and it would describe that?
So the concept was, what if a visually impaired person could just point out in front of them and they could hear describe what they're pointing at? So it was as simple as like a magic, like, I'm pointing, tell me what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That is. That was the idea. And
so it was a connection between the Braille nails and the camera, and you have to wear the Braille nails to get the camera to work. Is that right?
Yeah. So the idea was like, what if we could provide these nail designs, and it came with a camera badge, and there was a utility that that would be provided to visually impaired people. So I think now we obviously have phone apps that can do that, and it's there's a lot of different apps, but it was about building utility into a beauty product that had a really specific, I guess, use case for visually impaired people, which was really fun to work on and really difficult from a technical point of view, execution. But we got a prototype working and we tested it, and it was great. It didn't go any further than that, because to put a product like that into actual production for consumers is like millions of dollars and years and years and years. So So my point being, Humane, many, many years later, I think one of the features there was just to actually speak back what you're looking at, right? There was like a connected badge and interface that allowed you to use your fingers and gestures and things like that.
Yep.
So I think conceptually that feels really interesting. Like I feel like it's relevant. You know, when I first saw Humane, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. It reminds me of the project we did like so long ago. Obviously it was like, that was just one feature, but yeah, look, the pin, I don't know. I think it's got a long way to go.
Yeah, I think sometimes you don't actually have to, put that product into market. Sometimes the act of doing it, even maybe that company can show that did they ever like show that they'd worked on this with you, or it was never shown to anyone else? Or
no, it was used internally. It was like internal promotions and stuff like that, and it was used a lot internally at Google as well.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of like Google Cloud and machine learning events where, we showed that as here's a brand, like a brand partnership, and the sorts of things that you can start to do.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to say, it could act as a gesture sort of thing rather than being a product, like a gesture for innovation, a gesture for visually impaired people.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
I get your point. Yeah. I mean, I think Shiseido did PR it.
Oh, they did? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's not something you go, okay, there's...
Or was it the new iPhone or...
Yeah. It's like sometimes, you don't need to make everything. I think similarly, Humane should have maybe PR it, talk about it.
Yeah, I think...
Maybe don't release it as an actual product yet.
Yeah.
I think they cost $500 or something.
Yeah.
Or more. I don't know.
I agree that I think they should be more honest about it, like the CEO, just the way he was presenting it. He was just very much, this is the next iPhone or something like that, rather than this is like an experimental project. Like I feel like it was a GoFundMe project or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good way.
It was like, oh, that's cool. That'd be a cool thing. But yeah, there's a lot that I don't see working in the comments of all the videos. It's just like even the average person can see the problem with this product. But like you were saying, you never know where it's going to end up. And I remember a little product 10 years ago, called Google Glass. And I thought it was cool, but everyone else thought it was like a dorky thing. And maybe it wasn't working at that time because of the internet speed or the technology we had. But Apple just launched their Google VR. What is it? The Google AR
Vision Pro.
The Vision Pro, yeah. So that's similar to the the Google Glass. Which, So you never know.
I mean, at least Google
could be too early. Yeah.
Google had I think maybe self-awareness to
remove the product.
Identify Google Glass is not taking off. So how about we just which is that's part of the process, I think, of innovation. And I think Humane maybe should have identified that. Look, this is as polished and as final as we want it to be. So to your point, like let's just be honest about it. And I mean, even the use cases, like I think they edited like that product video a few times because like what it was coming back with, the answers were like empirically wrong. So I think even like Meta's they have frames, glass. I think they're Ray-Bans.
Oh yeah, right? So Snapchat actually launched that like years ago, and again it wasn't cool, but I looked those glasses up on eBay because I was like, maybe I should try them out. They're like $500 or something for a new one. But yeah, Snapchat did that ages ago, and now Meta has the glasses. Yeah. And I think that's the direction we're going in, from what I can see, with Google releasing the Vision Pro, and then with NFTs, which took off and then crashed. But NFTs I think they are gonna come back. Personally, like the the NFT art. What's the name for the NFT art? Can't remember the name now. Not tokens. Let me just check this. NFTs. Yeah, NFT, which is a crypto art. Sorry,
non-fungible token.
Yeah, so that is the name for like the crypto art product, and what I sort of imagine or what I've seen is likely to happen is, with the Vision Pro you can make screens large, but if you're in your house you can have artworks that maybe everyone's wearing the same glasses and they can see your artwork, and you can only have the artwork if there's limited number of the NFT artworks, things like that. So yeah, I think gradually we're going to adopt this technology. And yeah, definitely chat, GTP, AI, and crypto. I think crypto is still going to be a part of it. But yeah, there was also the rabbit pin. Have you seen the rabbit AI?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's basically, I was trying to find the name for it. It's called Rabbit R1 AI device. And it's a little device, and you just talk to it, and it has a really quick reply. So you can say, "Hey Rabbit, order me Uber Eats." It's kind of like Siri, but it works way better. And you get an instant response, and you can do a lot with it. So it's kind of what Humane was trying to do with this pin, where their selling point was you don't need to look at your phone or to be distracted to use it. But then, I see them like,
but then you've got
your hand, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But with this Rabbit R1, you can just like talk to it, and yeah, I think it's just an advanced Siri from what I can see, but it's like a little square thing. So I guess you don't actually need to look at the screen. So it does solve that problem in a way. So it actually does look pretty cool. But I think most phones are going to do that in the future anyway. But it is innovative in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing that Apple really needs to crack, it's probably Siri.
It's just terrible.
It's just horrible, isn't
Even
it?
Google, like the Google Home, it's not great either.
No, I mean, I always I liked Google Assistant when it was on like my Pixel phone when I was there. And yeah, I think for me, the Google Home system, it's gotten worse somehow. Like I think they could all probably improve on those, but definitely Siri the most.
Do you know if they're operating off AI? Like, because I think that's where the Rabbit R1 is excelling, because it is operating off like a chat GTP sort of thing, whereas the Google and Siri isn't, because that technology wasn't available, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that Google's absolutely adopting that sort of large language model into its assistant. Couldn't tell you about Siri because I don't use it. But yeah, any assistant I think in the future would be AI powered, so to speak. I think that would make the most sense. It's the easiest win for Apple as well, I think, to be able to like upgrade that system to be competitive with everything else that's out there. Like you can chat GPT has like, an OpenAI app you can get on your phone, and you can access, there is voice activated GPTs and things like that. So they're already out there. And if Google doesn't already have it, or Siri doesn't already have it, Apple doesn't already have it, I think they'll either develop it themselves or they'll just acquire one of the GPTs and integrate it in.
Yeah, I think Google's has launched Google Bard. I haven't tried it. It's just their version of...
It's okay.
Oh, you use it? Okay.
OpenAI is better.
Okay. Before we jump on to your role at Apple, are there any other exciting things you worked on at Google that you'd want to share or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, there was like just a lot. Like, I think every project, we're lucky because every project allowed us to create meaningful projects that made a difference in the world that we believe did. So for us, it was nice.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for us, it was nice because we were essentially stealing media advertising money and using it to create products or tools we believe should exist in the world.
Cool.
That made a difference.
That's amazing.
Like that was our, like, that's what we loved about it. And that's what we thought we were doing, or that's what we were trying to do. Right. So yeah, we did a lot of jobs in India, which was really fun. I love India, and the market there is just, it's so crazy. It's so big and it's so unique. It's, yeah. So we were lucky enough to work on a lot of different projects that provided real utility to people.
Could you touch on your perspective on the market in India? Because I'm kind of interested in that.
So when we worked in India, we worked with Flipkart, which was it's like, I guess, the Amazon of India. Really big online retailer, e-commerce platform. So what we did there was so they have like Amazon's Black Friday sale. Like they have their equivalent over in India, which is called Big Billion Days, or Big Billion Day. And so, I mean, it was still marketing and advertising in a sense, but they wanted to create and allow as many people as possible to be able to use, access those sales on this specific day. And accessibility is like quite a big problem, or was in India, because there's billions of people, right? Not everyone has a smartphone.
Yeah.
And a lot of like the modern conveniences were, it is accessing sites and accessing apps, and India is trying to digitize the country, right? It's just the problem they face is, how do you do that at the scale of India? Because there's billions of people, and there's extreme poverty. There's language barriers. There's a huge percentage of Indians can speak, right, but they're literate. They can't read or write because they were not taught that. So anyway, so this was a bit of a celebratory, sales day, and we developed an assistant, a voice assistant for Flipkart to release on that day, and we wanted to bring to life the haggling experience that it's like, it's so in India they pride themselves on being able to haggle the best deal possible. Like it's essentially a sport. That's how passionate they are about it. And it was a very simple idea that as soon as we presented it, they were just like, everyone just loved it.
I think that's awesome, bringing that cultural element into technology.
Yeah.
Just like converting that into technology. That's so cool. Yeah.
So you could haggle with the Flipkart assistant, and the more you haggled, the better you haggled, the bigger the discount on the product that you got. So we created a gamified experience that had discount and prize tiers, and we started to map, colloquial terms and certain words to discounts or prizes. We also mapped, profanities, or if someone's swearing, and it would undo any progress you've made. So it was a very responsive voice system that really felt like you were haggling with someone. So there was still AI like systems involved in that, like something called natural language processing, which the assistant had, which allowed for equivalent of like sentiment analysis. So you speak a phrase, it would identify like, not just the literal words, but the meaning behind that phrase. So then, you know, things like colloquialisms or, you know, maybe sarcastic sayings and things like that would be identified, and the responses then in turn would reflect, you know, what a normal response to something like that would be. So it just helped to generate as natural an experience as possible and a flowing, you know, haggle experience that felt real. So that was fun, and it allowed, you know, a lot more people. It was good for Flipkart. I mean, still feels very selly to me, but from an accessibility point of view, it was really successful. The Flipkart actually ended up acquiring a like a voice company off the back of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they actually bought a voice company to make more and more and more of their
Okay, because
business.
You guys designed it just for that one day, basically. Was it 1 day or 1 week?
I think it was a week.
Yeah. Okay. But then they saw how successful it was, so they made a whole.
They made a whole thing of it. Yeah.
And is it now a part of Flipkart? Like,
I would assume so. If they acquired a company off the back of it, I'm gonna guess yes. I wouldn't know. I'd need to go into the market and see, but like I can't do that.
And also I guess it's there's a line between innovation and then it's like you can use your innovative skills for good and I guess not evil. I'm just thinking of the apps. Like there's Alibaba and there's these new apps called Temu. I don't know. You jump on that, it's like a gambling experience. So it's like it works so well. Then it's like hacking into the, you know, the human's dopamine system of like gambling and like all that stuff. The voice one that was unique, I think, because that was like you're adopting. You know, an element of Indian culture, like the haggling and the love for haggling. I think that's really cool. And then again, people who, you know, they can't write, but they can talk to this app. I think that's like a cool methodology. But then, yeah, the company can, I don't know, I guess it's probably not as bad as these other gambling apps I've seen. But yeah, I think it was there's a line between innovation and kind of just like making as much money as possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, we don't have control over whether they've integrated now this voice system to be able to sell as many products as possible to people who don't necessarily need them. There's a difference there. I mean, to me that feels kind of a bit evil, right? As opposed to during this event, the system was designed for people to unlock as high of a discount as possible. So something that they already wanted to buy was like using it for them to get it as cheap as possible, as opposed to enabling, you know, enabling the ease of purchase all year round, no matter what.
Yeah. Okay.
Through a gamified, addicted sort of voice system. Yeah. That starts to verge on. Okay, you're using technology, and you're making the sales process a lot more efficient, and you're selling more products. Does that come under you're just making your site more accessible to more people, or are you specifically targeting more people just because you want to sell? I mean, every company like that wants to sell more. Yeah,
but then I think as a designer, you don't want to, like, you wouldn't advise on something that's going to damage the brand long term. Like, I think if a company, it was obvious they just, you know, like Shein, for example, they're selling, you know, online clothing, but now their reputation has gone down the tube because they're, not only are they selling things so quickly, there's, you know, everyone's questioning the sustainability around the brand and not everyone, because I think I'm not sure how the culture is in Japan. I saw a Shein, like an actual Shein store when I was in Tokyo, and I thought that was interesting, like a full actual store, not an online store. But I know they've got like a bad rap in terms of the fashion world as being like the worst brand for
like
the environment, like fast fashion basically. So I guess you want them to make money, but again, I guess if you're a good design thinker, you're thinking about the brand long term. You're not going to make something just to, make as much money as possible, because that can damage the brand.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I'd look at some company like that. I'd say, well, how can we innovate to reduce your footprint, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we actually build sustainability into your business model? And that's the challenge. Is like, well, you want to retain your profit margins, and maybe like how quickly you can turn around and manufacture and sell. And sure, like, I guess that challenge and that problem is innovation for them means not giving up that. Otherwise, they're not a successful business. But how do you allow them to continue on that trajectory while, reducing or eliminating this really harmful manufacturing process or waste process? Are they recycling? Are they not? What could they start to do with clothes that are thrown away? How can they source more sustainable fabrics? How can they manufacture in a more ethical manner? Like, these are all problems that are not insurmountable. And I'd say solving them would be an innovation from a retail point of view. And how do you start to do that? At the end of the day, I truly believe most problems, you can find a solution. You can find a really good one that makes both parties happy. Someone like Shein is like, they need to want to do it. Because you can't go in there and say, you can't force them to, unless government legislation maybe does, but they inherently really need to want to change.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting one, Shein, because I know in Australia, we actually have a culture, I think it's just like apart from where our, most of our income, our GDP comes from, I think most people like to think of themselves as people who want to help the environment, and, we're surrounded by nature. I think most people have an appreciation for nature and, want to invest in sustainable products. But Shein is, like a Chinese based company. And I think, I think Asia would be the majority of their consumer base. So I don't think Asia in general shares the same feeling for responsibility of the environment from what I've seen. So yeah, it's would their consumers want to, how could they overcome that if their consumers don't have that same outlook? That would be the challenge, I guess. Fashion's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think, yes, Australia is a lot more, I think, environmentally sort of conscious. Australian companies are as well. They should be. I think, like, mining has got so much to answer for. I think the sort of money that these mining companies are making, and I mean, they run the economy. I think everyone, public and government, like, really need to be asking and wanting to see a lot more from them, right? Like, everyone, they each have their own sustainability goals, and I'm sure they employ hundreds of people to ensure that, old mine sites are rehabilitated and this, that, and the other. But, from what I've seen, they, every company will create a sustainability report, and it's like, I don't want to know how much money they spend on those reports or to generate those reports, right? And it's justifying everything they're doing, and there's all these statistics around what they've done, what they plan to do, and like reports like that are so meaningless. It's just like, well, that's a report. Like, what are you doing with that report? Like, are you comparing reports year on year to see how you're improving? And I think I personally would like to, and there's a little side project that I'm working on with some friends around creating I guess like an ESG based creative service specifically for mining companies to sort of start to educate them on what they can be doing around sustainability beyond just producing a sustainability report and promising that these things will change in 5 to 10 years. I think they can be being a lot more active, and what they start to do with the data that's in these reports, like, that can all help start to educate the public a bit more about what they're actually doing. Because right now, like, I couldn't tell you what these mining companies are doing. I think most people couldn't tell you what they're doing. So I'd love to start to think of ways that, we can apply innovation and design thinking to mining companies as a way to sort of start to improve like the sustainability impacts that they're having, or the things that they plan to do, and also the education. Like, I think they should really start putting a lot of money towards educating the public on the importance of sustainability. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
that was a bit of a tangent now.
No, that was it's a topic I did want to cover, and I have talked about it on this podcast before, which is I think Australian culture doesn't value creativity, but I think if we change that around, we could be a really innovative country. Because right now, what I'm seeing is we know how to dig resources out of the ground and sell it, but there's a gap. Like, we could, if we adopted something where we could use those resources, which is like the creative side, instead of, typically we sell it to China or Japan to make cars and products. Like, we have the ability to use these resources to turn it into something, yet we don't. I think that's something to do with like labor costs and that sort of thing. But I don't think mining's going to go away. Yes, I want to see mining become as sustainable as possible, but I don't think it's going to go away. But something that I would like to see from it is like what I think what you're thinking about doing, which is how can we use mining to create sustainable products, like an innovative products. So I'm seeing some innovation in AI, like mining and AI. I think even there's some Perth companies like Safe AI. I think they're doing some pretty innovative stuff with AI and mining. Like, I feel like there could even be a creative boom in Australia if we used, money from mining, invested it back into mining, but maybe more innovative ways to mine and more sustainable ways to mine. Like, you're seeing that maybe the future I think the future of mining is AI trucks, electric vehicles, using the money and turning it into innovation and creating jobs in that process, using design thinking to, kickstart maybe a more sustainable future for mining, and then create a culture around using that design thinking and create a culture around innovative thinking, which we don't have in Australia because we're just used to digging products, selling products, fly-in flat workers going there. We're not, as I was saying, we're not creating anything here. So there's this opportunity to have some sort of creative boom, and I think it could be happening if you look at what's happening in the construction industry with 3D printed houses being made by a machine. Like, we should be investing as much as possible in that, which is one of our biggest GDP earners in Australia. And then mining as well, invest in AI, invest in electric vehicles, just make it more sustainable as much as possible. And I know mining and sustainability doesn't really go hand in hand, but I think maybe with new technology it can. So, and we've got, so much, such a huge income that comes from mining. I think we should be investing it into, more sustainable products, more innovative thinking, and I think we can, create Australian jobs from that. So Australia isn't I don't think Australia's a creative country compared to other countries, but there can be some sort of boom, and I think there's a possibility we can flip that.
Yeah. No, we've got to at least try, right?
Yeah. Because mining has such a bad rap. Like, I think they'd want to just invest in more innovative thinking into, cleaner ways of doing things, right? Like, that's their problem. They're the user. They need innovative thinkers to help them overcome that problem of, having that stigma of being, unsustainable.
Yeah. No.
So as you're saying, if anything's possible, it's possible for mining to be a sustainable practice.
Of course. Well, they're definitely more sustainable than they are now. I mean, we're not going to create a zero, a mining company that has zero carbon footprint or anything like that. But everything can be improved on. And I think, mining companies should want that, right? But the reality is, if they're not getting pressure from every angle to change, then they'll focus on their profit margins, and they'll change when they're forced to. Like, right? So, like, if our climate or our ecosystems really start to shit the bed, then then they'll be reactive and they'll change. But real change is about being proactive. And at this point, I don't think we're even being proactive anymore. It's like, it's gotten to a point where
I think we're too relaxed. Even the government's too relaxed, because it's so easy for them to just get the money from mining. I think another thing I think about is, like, we should be focusing on our tourism industry. Like, focus on that. That's investing in Australia long term. Like, this, sustainable. Investing in tourism, that brings a lot. But if you look at the stuff Andrew Forrest has been doing with the Minderoo Foundation, that's sort of an example of he is sort of investing more in I think he's trying to turn around what maybe he's done with I think he owned Rio Tinto, or part of Rio Tinto, I believe. But he's investing more into sustainability, and even actively kind of showing the unsustainable practices of other mining companies. And he's got investments in the arts with the Minderoo Foundation. So it's it's that the bad rap that the mining industry has. He's trying to use that money and turn it into something good, which is it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, as long as they're doing it, using that money to turning it into good, not to distract us and just continue doing things the way they've always been doing.
Like greenwashing. Yeah. No, that's a good point. So I haven't looked deeply into it. Yeah. But I'm aware that he's investing more into the
and look,
and stuff. I guess it's a start.
It's like I think it's a start. I'd love to see more of it from everyone, right? But easier said than done.
Yeah. Yep. I want to talk about Apple, because we haven't gone into that. So how did you kind of, I guess it must have been easier going from Google to Apple than freelancing in Sydney to Google, but how was it different from Google? How was the design thinking different from Google, and what sort of projects did you work on?
So we So at the end of, halfway through 2019, we guess we wanted a bit of a change. We saw some, I guess, like cracks in Google that years later eventuated into like this sort of huge layoffs that we saw in 2021, like from most of the tech industry. We like Tim and myself were, 2019 we'd been at Google for 5 years. There was still any company, it's a great company to work for, but there's frustrations, especially as a creative person in companies that aren't inherently creative.
Okay.
There's always like sort of friction and frustrations that you're faced with. We just saw like a sort of downturn in productivity and less of a desire to really invest in innovation projects. And there was a bit of a ceiling we were hitting as well. So we decided to go over to a market where we didn't have much experience, no experience working in market, which was the US market. And we thought, okay, if we're leaving Google, we need to go somewhere equally as impressive. And there's not many companies, so Apple came to mind.
Yeah.
And we got in touch with the chief creative officer at Media Arts Lab, which is owned by TBWA, which is an advertising company. But Media Arts Lab
in the US.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess when you've been working at Google, they'll kind of they'll probably respond to your emails.
So we spoke with I think it was a recruiter who then put us in touch with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Had some talks with them and struck up a deal to move over to LA to work for Media Arts Lab, which did the advertising and all that stuff for Apple. And it was right at the end of 2019 that we ended up moving our lives over to LA. And yes, normally it would be a much easier move from Japan to LA than Sydney to Japan. However, unbeknownst to us and to everyone, right, COVID was 2 months around the corner. So, we landed in LA and, sort of got started pretty quickly on the iPhone account. So we worked solely on the iPhone. And just as we were sort of getting, kind of settled in LA, obviously COVID hit, right? And it was just like,
LA, the place to be.
Crazy. Yeah. It was like COVID wasn't enjoyable for anyone. Definitely, it was really bad in LA.
Yeah.
Like it was States. I'm sure you guys saw it, but it was not great. So yeah, look, bad timing. Obviously, how are you meant to know that? So yeah, I think like anyone, we sort of just got through it as best as we could. It did shape our time and our experience there quite a lot. Working on Apple was crazy. It was very different to Google. Google's very experimental, very sort of rough and ready, and test prototype.
Yep.
And Apple was like very considered and meticulous and crafted and slow, but you were still working like 12, 14 hours a day. It was like...
Yeah. I wanted to ask, what was the work culture like in Japan, I guess maybe compared to Australia, and then maybe if you're comparing to LA as well, because I think of Japan is a place that appreciates creativity. If you look at the architecture, the arts, the fashion scene, the public art, the galleries, all that. But at the same time, if you look at the work culture in Japan, you have the Japanese businessman who just sometimes you see them passed out in the street.
Salaryman.
The salaryman. So it's a creative. It's a country that values creativity. I mean, like they also create lots of, like Nintendo, the gaming, all that. But at the same time, it can be a rigid society from what I've seen. It's very orderly as well at the same time. So do you think they have this balance figured out between creative living and lifestyle and do you think they have a balance, a work-life balance in Japan figured out? Or like what's your take on that?
I think well, a couple of things there. Like living in Japan and visiting Japan is like very different experiences. Like there's a lot of living there. When you really get to know like all the sides of Japan, it's like there's some pretty like not so healthy things going on there when it comes to like cultural expectations, societal expectations. Like work culture. Look, we were lucky because we worked at an American company there, so a lot of the, I'd say, salaryman expectations or culture didn't apply to us. You still saw it within Google, though, still because we were still in Japan, so there were domestic workers there. But yeah, they absolutely do not have a balance between work and life. Not in the slightest. No, it's Japan really values creativity, and ideas and different ways of thinking. They value craft and their art and design, really almost above all else. But they also value and reward loyalty, like when it comes to a corporate job, that what that looks like is, essentially your dedication to a company for 45, 50 years or longer. It's kind of, and it's going way back now to like the conversation we were talking about, like why was Google Japan looking for international creative directors? Or because there's a few big advertising agencies in Japan, the biggest being Dentsu, who employ probably like 80% of the creative people in Japan. So, and because of this loyalty, like even Google, it was almost impossible for them to attract that talent over to Google because those creative people wouldn't leave.
That's interesting.
Their companies, right?
Yeah,
because they were loyal to it. Because of that, it sort of breeds, personally, I think, like a really unhealthy work culture because, I guess climbing the corporate ladder in Japan is based on age and tenure at a company, not necessarily your skills and your ability to do your job. It's like if you're there long and you're proven to be a loyal worker,
gotcha.
That's how you rise the ranks. It's not by working harder. It's not by showing initiative and being brilliant. It's like there's a hierarchy there, and it's like So I think in a lot of ways where they value innovation and creativity, there's a flip side to that where it's like really, really traditional and old school and rigid and sort of like, there is a real inability to change and affect a lot of the ways things get done there.
Yeah.
Which I think is also like why a lot of foreigners and expats that live there sort of get burnt out a little bit after like 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
You hit this point where you're like, those things really do start to get to you, and you either stay on, and if you stay past that time, it's like a lifer. You know, if you're there beyond 7 or 8 years, the likelihood is that you're just going to stay there.
Okay.
And for the people below that, like there's the 4 or 5 year mark was the magic sort of cool. I'm out.
Yeah.
You know, that's I think where we got to was we needed a bit of a change, and I loved my time there. I love everything about Japan. But I wanted to leave while I still love it. I didn't want to get to the point where I was like a jaded sort of expat that was disgruntled and annoyed at the way things are there, because it's a different culture. So who are we to change the culture, right? And I think I wanted to, to leave before I got to that point.
Okay. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I think, it's a country that they kind of know who they are. Like they value craftsmanship, but at the same time, loyalty and design. So, when you go there, everything's just like working like clockwork. But I guess if not everybody's there is a creative. So once you're in a job, and you value that loyalty, you're going to just stay with that company, and you would rather work for that company and show your loyalty than. Do you think they want to show that loyalty more than them sort of having a good lifestyle in a way? Like in general, that's what they do. Yeah, absolutely. So they put their job before themselves.
1,000,000%. Yeah. And again, like I mean, we're not talking about everyone here, right? Because Japan has a really vibrant startup scene, and there are a lot of younger Japanese really doing things differently, right? So this is a huge generalization, but it does account for, the majority of the working class there. I think, again, this is just my opinion, so I'm sure there's people that maybe don't see it exactly this way, but yeah, for sure, the majority of corporate Japan is hugely male dominated, and your job is put before everything.
Okay. And because it's interesting contrast to Australian work life, where I think we generally do have a pretty good work-life balance here. I'd say in general, like
way better than
we
the
enjoy
US
our
as well.
lifestyle. Like I think most Australians enjoy like the outdoors, like the beach. Even like people who come and live here, I think they're like, wow, like we love our space because we've got so much of it. And it's just like when a Japanese person comes in, they see the houses we're living in, they're like, well, it's so huge. Because they're living in tiny apartments.
Yeah. My girlfriend's Japanese. We've been together 5 years now. She's been to Perth twice. But yeah, for her, like, what she considers like a big place is like very, very different to what we would consider a big place, right? Like when she looks at like a small 2x1 house, that's like, that is big. Like, what are you going to do with all that space? Like, you got to clean it too. Like, what? That's so much work, And like, for us, like a 2x1 is just like, what? Like I've got no space. Like, where's the front yard and the backyard so yeah, it's very different. Space is definitely something we have here, and that helps, I guess, influence a much healthier. It's like, what do you do as well when you finish work, right? Like Australians are very active. It's like there's so much beach, there's so many parks and ovals, social sporting leagues and stuff. Like it does exist in other places, obviously. Like there's a lot of Japanese love, obviously, baseball, right? There's lots of parks, and but generally speaking, the confines of a city especially do influence, even subconsciously, your ability to move around and your, I think, I guess your, whether you're drawn to like go for a 5 kilometer run, it's a lot easier to do here, I think, than in Japan. You can, but if you're right in the city, it's like
it's not as much open space.
No.
So it's interesting question is who values space more in general, like Australians or people in Japan, because I think the Japanese use space
so
really well.
Yeah.
like efficiently.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of space.
Yeah. I know the answer to that. The Japanese value that space way more because what you have in spades, you don't necessarily value until it's gone. So I think Australians love space. Do we value it? No, not if that's all we've known. We would if we go to Japan.
Yeah.
Or a big city and live in New York for a while. And then we come back here. Shit, then we're like, holy... Yeah, we do value space differently. I think the Japanese very much value space because it's like a scarce resource there. And because of that, the spatial, like the design, right, like of a tiny little apartment, like the storage and like the design solutions to really tight spaces, incredible. And I think that stems from, they value every single centimeter and they make use of it, right? They do something with it. And so, they definitely value it more.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And that's, it ties into the whole urban design of Japan and the transport system. I think, here in Perth, we've got like such a big urban sprawl problem. Like we don't use space efficiently at all. Even we've got, predominantly low density living, like big blocks, which is amazing. Like I think at the end of the day, it might be a better lifestyle. I think it's a better lifestyle for the average person to a point until you have to drive an hour to meet your friend.
Yeah.
So I think for early Perth, it's amazing, but like now we're like, we're kind of getting a bit far. So I think we need to start building like medium density living, and we definitely need to start using space more efficiently because we got to that point. But I think we're making so much money selling big blocks of land and house, so we're probably not going to do it again. The money is valued more than the creek.
Because we have space, we can just carve up more land, right? We can build more estates down out in Alkimos and
open up a new suburb every week.
Let's just create a new village, So again, it also shows me like we don't value space because it's just like you just carve up more, and that sprawl continues, and you'll get to a point where you need to drive a couple of hours, or we don't upgrade and sort of design the roads and the systems to match, and we get into a problem where, like LA, the traffic was horrific, so bad. So if we don't, I guess, design and implement the adequate public transport and road systems and things like that, then there's plenty of problems that will come up if we don't, think about them and design for them appropriately. But we'll see.
No, I think I always think if there was a bullet train from Perth to Albany, that'd be so good.
Actually, if there's one place where Shinkansen would really work for its money, it would be WA, wouldn't it? It's like there's so much space.
100%.
And it's beautiful up in northern WA. It's to get there quickly.
Yeah, one up north, one down south.
Yeah.
Shinkansen, hit us up.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to LA
Yeah.
and Apple and
Mm.
COVID. Lot of questions there. LA living, so bad traffic. Do you see any parallels between LA and Perth, or not? Not really.
Yeah. Coming from Japan, I think LA was probably as close to Perth as I'd seen in a long time. Just city right on the coast, big freeways, big roads, suburbs laid out somewhat similar. So for me, it was like, at first it felt really familiar. And then, but again, like COVID just shook everything up, didn't it? Like it's crazy to think about now, back to then. But
Probably one of the worst places for it. Do you reckon?
I mean, yeah, everywhere's pretty bad. Like it was, yeah, it
Not
was,
Perth though.
yeah, except Perth.
The one time you leave Perth.
Yeah, exactly. New York was really bad first, but then LA followed really soon after. Like, yeah, it was not a nice place to be. There's a lot of other stuff going on as well.
But you could still work at Apple during that time,
So
or work from home, or
we worked from home pretty quickly. Everyone got moved out of the office. I mean, the Apple campus was up in Cupertino, which is not where I was. I was in the Media Arts Lab office, which was down in what was it called now? I've forgotten where that was. It was like near Marina. No, I've forgotten the name of it.
we can put it in the description.
South from from Venice. I won't look it up now. So yeah, look, we were working from home pretty soon after arriving there. But the workload there was like crazy. Like there was a much worse work-life balance than
Really?
Yeah.
In Japan?
Yeah, hugely. Look, some of it's got to do with just the corporate culture over in the US.
Oh, really?
In advertising, yeah.
Interesting.
And then also just it's pretty notorious Media Arts Lab for really churning and burning people, because Apple's like one of the most famous brands in the world to work on from a marketing advertising perspective. So when you get there, it's almost, it feels like a bit like
a trap.
You should consider yourself lucky to work on this brand kind of thing. It was a bit,
yeah, okay.
To be honest with you, it was like, it was kind of toxic.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, I got to meet and work with some of the most talented people, you know, I've ever met, and Apple does attract, you know, the account attracts like a lot of really different types of creative people as well. So, you know, the people there were lovely. It's just the legacy of that account and how it operated and the expectations placed on you, and you know, it was pretty unmanageable, which is why there's a really high turnover rate there.
Who did you get to work with? Like over there, the incredible people. Were they like known people or just people in your sort of office, sort of?
Yeah, just
amazing creative people.
Yeah, amazing creative people. I mean, a lot of the directors that were hired on the TV shoots and stuff were like, you know, sort of like Academy Award winning, Oscar winning sort of directors. So, but no, the creatives there were just really talented creative people. From, you know, some worked in tech or came from tech, others worked at different advertising agencies, but they'd all done really amazing work, and I found it really refreshing again, because it was a different type of person to work with. That, you know, the type of person I worked with at Google, they were like engineers, very, very smart engineers, and the people I worked with at Media Arts Lab were super creative, like really talented, creative, craft oriented people. Yeah, because the what Apple didn't have in the experimentation side of things that Google had, Apple had in just the craft and the detail
Or the product.
on everything you did, right? So there was so much obviously on the products, and that same dedication and meticulous sort of craft was applied to everything they did, from an online banner to a big TV commercial to a social post.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was very inspiring, and also we learnt a lot there, just about about craft, really, because Google was great. It was very innovative and tech and experimental focused. Like we learnt the methodologies there and like all that good stuff. And then at Apple, it was like, really, okay, this is what craft means. You know, it's like going over something like for weeks on end and sort of sweating the tiniest of details for days and days and days. Like, so it was.
And you were surrounded by people who also valued that.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Okay. And what specific projects, like I know you worked on the iPhone 12, but what was it about the iPhone 12? Was it the product itself? Was it the advertising behind it? And what sort of other stuff did you generally work on?
So we worked on the launch. Like when you work on the launch there, on any product launch, normally when you're working in the office, you have to work from they were called black rooms. They were rooms that had no windows at all, and they had one door in and out, and it was security locked. And for privacy reasons, so there were no like new product leaks or anything like that. Everything you did, your laptop, everything needed to stay in that room. So you'd get in the morning, you'd go into this room, and you'd have to work 12 plus hours a day in a room, and everyone else that worked on the project was in that room with you. And you couldn't take anything out. No one else was allowed in. It was a little bit like a jail cell, honestly. But because of COVID, they didn't have that. So we were under strict instructions to like close the curtains if we were in a room with windows, so no one from a neighboring house could see you, like really ridiculous stuff like that. And so we worked on like an online digital configurator for the new phone. So that iPhone 12 was the one that first came out with the MagSafe. So it had all the sort of connected wallets and stuff like that. So for Apple and iPhone generally doesn't really change much at all. That was a really big deal because it was suddenly like, oh, they're accessories. So yeah, we created a big online configurator that allowed people to get hands-on with the phone, which was also like a way, because normally when new phones were released, you'd go into an Apple store and pick it up and have a look at it, which you couldn't do because all the Apple stores were closed because of COVID. So this online configurator, while basic in nature, was really the Apple store for this launch, right? Because physical ones didn't exist. So yeah, it was just like a way to digitally see the phone, the different colors, the different attachments, see it in AR, and things like that. So that whole online experience. And
what do you think of the MagSafe? How did it turn out?
So I didn't have the wallet. I kind of like the case because the magnetic holders that you have now in cars, like I have one, that's essentially MagSafe, right?
Okay, my thing is someone could just take it off or it could fall off. Yeah, I mean it's pretty strong.
It's got to be strong. Yeah, like if I'm going off road, then it suddenly becomes not so good, right? But for any driving here, it sticks on.
Oh no, I think the magnet is good and the charging is good. I used to use that, but the wallet.
Oh, so I never used the wallet.
Yeah, the wallet. I just feel like it could.
Oh yeah.
It could accidentally come off, or someone could just easily, your phone could be in there. Just take the wallet and leave the phone. I
never used it because it wasn't good enough. Okay. To me, I just wasn't getting any use out of it. So I just
But you use the MagSafe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I haven't used it for a car holder device. I think that would be
That's
good. But I mean, I got one of these wallets which I like.
oh
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know, it doesn't. But then it blocks. The thing is, you can't use the wallet and then charge it on the MagSafe, right? You got to take it
Gotcha.
off, and I like to keep it all together. But yeah, that was one thing I
Yeah.
was questioning about it. But yeah,
I mean, it was fun to work on. It was interesting. We created a bunch of social content as well around the phones, like the new cameras, what it could do in low light.
oh, you worked on that?
Mhm.
Yeah, that was like the first launch of the 3 cameras. Hey, the 12 Pro. Yeah, I think I know
think
it because
so. Yeah.
I got the 12 Pro, and I remember when it came out,
Yeah.
I was like, I do a lot of photography, so
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was really good in low light. So we created like these content series on the Apple Instagram. So a bunch of work for that. And honestly, that pretty much took like a year to do because of the time.
Because of that, I guess it's Apple's culture again. Like they spend a lot of time on one
crazy.
thing, whereas Google's
I was
like a bit.
Yeah, like in the space of working on the iPhone 12 launch, I probably would have, maybe had 4 or 5 different projects at Google, and then at Apple it was just that one, and that was what you were focused on. It was like that one thing. So that was a bit of a change. Challenging as well. It was like really, it was tough. It was super difficult. It was like really long days, just going over everything to the nth degree. I don't know. It was really interesting. We learned a lot about craft. We learned a lot about ourselves as well, and what we want, how we want to apply our creativity, I think, as well.
And was Tim in Japan still, or he came over to
He
LA?
came over as well.
Okay.
We actually lived again together in LA, but we had a much bigger place. So
Oh, not bigger than Japanese
yeah.
apartment.
Yeah, so it was manageable. We each had our own floor, so we could not see each other as well if we chose.
Oh, coming from Japan, that must have been pretty good.
That was important.
And then If Labs.
Yeah.
Imagine If Labs.
Mm-hmm.
How did that develop from LA? Or did you have the idea in Japan or not really?
No, I mean, Tim and I had always talked about like do we want to keep working for companies for the rest of our careers? And after being at Google and then going and working on Apple, was like, like where do you go after that? And like there wasn't anywhere that particularly excited us. We'd always talked about starting our own thing, like working for ourselves. And I think more than anything, we've always been looking for a challenge. I think creative people they always need a challenge. Like
I feel like we need to switch things up all the time. Like we can get bored of one type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally we could feel that coming. Again, Tim, like 2020 was a really tough year for everyone, but it took it out of us from a work point of view, from a personal point of view. Both our partners had visas to come over to the US. Both of them got cancelled because of COVID. They cancelled the visas. So, that was tough. Tim was married. So, at the end of 2020, he was just like, look, man, I've got to go back and see my wife. And I was like, of course, like, dude, you don't need to. And at that time as well, we had spent the year working really hard. You could see that people were getting laid off, and we've never taken any job or position we've had for granted. We're like, look, there's a chance that we might get fired, or like maybe they revoke working visas for people. There was just so many things were up in the air, and Tim was like, look, man, I'm not going to wait around and find out. Like, I want to leave on my terms, and I'm going to go back to my wife. And I was like, absolutely, I support you 100%. Don't worry. So he quit at the end of 2020 and went back to Japan, and I stayed on. And that was the first time since, well, ever in our careers working together that, we'd quit and done things separately.
Damn, you guys split up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Breakup. 2020. Damn,
yeah,
2020 was hard.
yeah, it was tough. But look, yeah, and I stayed on for another 6 months. But like Perth was completely locked down during that time. I hadn't seen my family here in a long time, and I was just like, without Tim there, I was like, I did really feel alone. I had no family there, didn't have my girlfriend there, didn't have Tim there. The job was good, it was okay. I was working on Apple, which was amazing, but in that situation, it shows you that work's important and a job's important, but it's never going to be more important than friends or family or your work outside of life, as your life outside of work. Sorry. So, I then also decided, I was like, look, I'm gonna move back home. I mean, it first came up because I said to them, hey, I need to go back and see my family. Can I work from Australia for a few months? They're like, yeah, of course. We can make that work. But when I explained to them the situation that Perth was kind of unique to Perth, which was like it was really locked down, and there was a possibility that maybe I couldn't get out even though I had a visa for the US. Like it was pretty certain that I would, but there was a risk, and they didn't particularly like that risk. They were like, we'll give you a few months, but you need to come back then. And I couldn't guarantee that I would. So I think they were like, look, man, you need to make a decision whether you want to stay here. You want to keep the job, or you want to move back. And it was good. It was a difficult decision, but when I look back on it now, it wasn't that hard. It was so I then quit as well, packed up everything and moved back to Perth. So at that point, I hadn't worked with Tim, and we'd stayed in touch, obviously. I got back to Perth. We didn't have a plan. We were like, shit, cool. So what are we going to do now? Like, Tim essentially had 6 months off, and
was Tim working at? He wasn't working at Google again, right?
No. He just
Yep.
had nothing. He was
Yep.
he was kind of enjoying some time off. And so we decided to start a company ourselves, and the aim of Imagine If Labs is to replicate as much as possible the way of working and the methodology that we sort of established at Google, and applying that to lots of different types of businesses and advertising and marketing. I think we had this point to prove, which was, look, innovation doesn't mean, or creative innovation doesn't mean you have to fork out a whole heap of money and we're going to start building robots and AI systems. Like, innovation means it means something to this person. It may mean something completely different to someone else. And, everyone in every business can be innovative. You can create an innovative product. Innovation also means, like, there's this way of doing it. Like, let's do it slightly differently. Like, you're innovating a process. So I think we have a bit of a bone to pick about the misinterpretation of the word innovation, and also like design thinking and how people think about those things, and really proving just how applicable it is to many different industries as possible. And that's what we're trying to do. So we with our company, we work with a lot of global clients, mainly outside of Australia. But
what are some sort of examples of clients?
A lot of crypto companies, Nikon, like a Chinese health and wellness sort of e-commerce brand. We work still with larger agencies.
So again, would you say, imagine if labs is the buffer that companies use, like the safety buffer they use to apply innovation to their company? Because as you were saying, we're saying innovation can have a lot of risk. So they're kind of trusting you guys to help that. Is that what it's facilitating that, or?
Yeah, like a lot of the times we're doing work, right? So we do a lot of, I guess, brand strategy work, branding and design work, like, advertising campaigns as well. We still do that sort of stuff. But, our approach to it is we're still following the process that we've always followed. Even though we're creating a brand strategy, we're doing it in like a design thinking sort of a way, or we're applying our methodology to that brand strategy, right? So you can still be innovative with that brand strategy. You can still stand for more. You can still do things differently. So I think for us, that approach to innovation is our secret sauce. And then we work in the advertising and marketing and branding world, and we do a lot of sort of experiential activations as well, like designing experiences for people and companies at like conferences and stuff like that.
What's an example of something you guys have created at Imagine If Labs for a brand?
So for Nikon, that's not come out yet.
Okay.
So, but it's like anything from a global brand campaign. So like we're doing a big advertising campaign now for Nikon. So TV commercials, print ads, stuff like that. And then a crypto company we work with, we create, they have a lot of events. One's coming up for ETH Denver. It's a big like Ethereum conference. And
so you're obviously not doing the full production and all that sort of thing. You're sort of coming up with the ideas and the design thinking behind the production that they can apply, or the event that they can apply, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we'll sit down with them and like sort of figure out what is it that they want to communicate, what is it that they want to do, like the impact that they want to have. And then we'll, like, let's say it's like this event activation. We'll come up with a concept, a theme, the art direction. If there's technology involved, it's like the sort of technology and why we're using it. It's like we like to give a reason as to why, make something look good, but like why are we doing it this way? And then it's about selling in the idea, right? It's like, is this an idea that you want to do? Making sure everyone's like, yeah, this is it. And we normally give like a range of ideas. It's like, go this way. Here's another idea. Here's another idea that looks completely different. Once we figure out and sell, that idea or concept in, then we generally will pull in production partners to record that are required to bring that to life. So if it's, there's like at the minute there's like huge like floor to ceiling it's a massive cube floor to ceiling screens, like LED screens, and there's 3 big sides to it. So we're working with like an animation company to come up with really cool sort of 3D animation for all of that. Like we're
okay, so you don't only come up with the ideas, you're the middleman behind some of the products, sort of thing. Like you would outsource the people who make the 3D screens and connect with them as well?
No, we'll hire a production company that can deliver on that vision that we've set.
Oh, okay.
And then they'll be like, okay, cool.
So
here's how we're going to bring that to life.
Yeah. Okay, so you would outsource the middleman, in a sense, the right middleman for the right product, and then connect back to the company.
To the company, yeah.
Okay.
Or sometimes the companies have their own production companies, and then we'll creative direct it, right? So they bring bring on the animators and the production company, and they're like, cool, this is your team that's going to make it. And then we'll interface with them and like, cool, here's what we need. And just
And that's all over, because you said international clients, it's all over Zoom.
Yeah.
And Zoom between yourself and Tim. Okay, that's interesting. I think I haven't had a guest on yet because I've been wondering, like, I've been sure it's possible that you can, work with international brands whilst being in one of the most isolated places in the world,
Yeah.
which is pretty inspiring, I'd say. But I mean, you had to go out, connect, and then sort of come back here. It wasn't just put in your lap, but it's possible to work from Perth with international brands as a creative.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so. Definitely more possible now after COVID. Like remote working is a lot more normal. So yeah, like it depends on your partners and like, let's say there's a client involved as well. Like I think there's still an affinity to this idea of control if the companies you're working with are in the same market and time zone and as you, like, definitely still see that. But most of the jobs we have are very, like, Nikon is the production company we're working with in Tokyo, and the brand's based, Nikon's based in Tokyo, but the head client's based in France, in Paris. So
okay.
And then I'm here. So that's like three different
time zones,
3 different markets, but
everyone's working internationally anyway. Okay.
Yeah. So Perth shouldn't be, not anymore, shouldn't be a barrier, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think more and more these opportunities will come about for creatives or people living in isolated places as creatives. No, I think that's really inspiring. And yeah, thanks so much, Gene, for coming on and sharing your whole story. It's like inspiring for me to see someone from Perth do all that, go out into the world, and then even come back and still be working from Perth. And yeah, for someone to work, for Google and Apple, that's really awesome. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing that.
No, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.